The third decade of life hits you like a freight train. You finally land a solid paycheck. Then reality shatters your victory dance. Suddenly, you are staring at real estate papers. You ask yourself how people afford this reality. Your wealth gets stretched in a dozen different ways. It feels like a tug of war with your money. Education costs demand your immediate focus. Property deposits drain your hard-earned cash. Investment portfolios beg for consistent funding. Through all this chaos, you must keep a clear head. People always say the previous decade was for learning. Nobody gives you the harsh truth about this new era. This is the timeline where ignorance stops being cute. You are expected to have the rulebook completely memorized. The money choices you finalize right now are permanent. They will either build a fortress of absolute comfort, or they will force you into decades of endless struggle. Escaping the paycheck cycle requires mastering these specific targets. These are not just casual suggestions for your portfolio. They are strict requirements for long-term wealth building. We are skipping the usual introductions to get right to it. You need a solid roadmap for this chaotic transition. Let us set the record straight before moving forward. The goal here is never to induce financial guilt. Perhaps you are already dominating your personal wealth targets. Or maybe your current balance triggers absolute pure panic. You might even consider abandoning modern society entirely. Regardless of your current status, drop the heavy shame. These targets are not a critique of past mistakes. They act as a compass for a highly stressful era. The absolute first mandatory checkpoint is completely destroying consumer liabilities. We are aiming for an absolute balance of zero. The only acceptable red ink is a primary property loan. Every single other outstanding balance must be totally wiped out. Plastic borrowing has to be eliminated from your life. University financing must be aggressively attacked and cleared. Auto financing cannot remain on your monthly expense sheet. Even that lingering personal loan for that old sofa. Everything must be completely zeroed out without any exceptions. This requirement is non-negotiable for serious future wealth generation. You might be staring at the screen convinced that this objective is mathematically impossible, especially if your university borrowing rivals the economic output of a small island nation. However, the underlying mechanics of this phase in your life make debt elimination absolutely critical. You have officially entered your maximum income generating window, where your compensation is likely peaking and projecting upward. Allowing toxic borrowing to act as financial quicksand during your most profitable years is a catastrophic error that drains the power of every dollar you bring home. Consider the raw mathematics behind everyday consumer financing to see the true damage. If you are sending away $500 every month to cover high-interest plastic and losing another $700 to an auto lender, you are actively bleeding $1,200 of potential capital. That is money making institutional banks richer instead of building your own empire. Over a single year, you have surrendered $14,400 to the system. Stretch that across the decade, and you have essentially burned $144,000 in raw cash. That staggering figure ignores the massive compound growth you completely forfeited by not investing those funds. Beyond the pure mathematical loss, this decade introduces a heavy layer of logistical complexity that accelerates without warning. You are suddenly balancing heavier corporate expectations, maintaining an independent household, potentially raising the next generation, and simultaneously watching older relatives require increasing levels of medical and daily support. Attempting to navigate this complex web of heavy responsibilities while carrying a heavy burden of consumer liabilities is a recipe for complete psychological exhaustion. Think about an everyday scenario involving an aging relative who stubbornly refuses to hire professional help for home repairs, leading to inevitable plumbing disasters or structural issues. When a pipe suddenly bursts, the individual shackled by relentless monthly loan payments lacks the immediate financial liquidity to simply dispatch a professional contractor to resolve the crisis. Instead, they are forced to waste precious time and energy attempting to patch an overwhelming problem with cheap tools, resulting in escalating damage and severe frustration. Complete freedom from consumer obligations provides the ultimate luxury of financial agility, allowing you to instantly deploy capital to solve sudden life emergencies without hesitation or stress. The second non-negotiable target is achieving an elite credit rating. We are talking about breaching the 800-point threshold. Many dismiss this metric if they operate strictly in cash, but let us look at the reality of real estate acquisition. Unless you are buying property outright, that three-digit number dictates your borrowing penalty. Let us run a conservative simulation. Imagine financing a $500,000 property. With an impeccable credit profile, a lender might offer you a 6.0% fixed rate. Over 3 decades, you will bleed approximately $580,000 just in interest. It is a harsh reality of the housing market. Now, suppose your rating is merely average, bumping your rate to 6.5%. That tiny half% adjustment adds up fast. You are now looking at roughly $638,000 in interest payments. You effectively lose an extra $58,000 for the exact same property, simply because your financial reputation was not optimized. The true danger lies in how fragile that three-digit number actually is. A single neglected invoice slipping past the 30-day mark can instantly wipe out 150 points from your profile. That catastrophic drop will haunt your financial record for nearly a decade. Plunging from an elite tier down to the subprime category over a forgotten billing cycle could drain tens of thousands from your future net worth through inflated borrowing costs. Fortunately, guarding this metric is straightforward. Ensure every single obligation is settled punctually. Keep your revolving debt utilization firmly below the 30% mark, though aiming for under 10% is the golden standard. Resist the urge to open unnecessary store cards. Furthermore, never shut down your oldest credit lines unless they carry absurd annual fees. Your history's length proves your reliability, and severing those old accounts actively damages your credibility. Moving to the third critical phase, architecting a holistic financial blueprint spanning the next 3 decades. Peering 30 years into the future might induce anxiety, but navigating this decade without a master strategy guarantees chaos. You are suddenly balancing conflicting wealth targets, making a structured approach mandatory. Think of it as a 5-pillar framework. First, you must dictate your exact cash flow, knowing exactly where every dollar is deployed. Second, secure your distant future by optimizing long-term accumulation vehicles, ensuring you are actually on pace to retire comfortably. Third, you must establish asset protection. If dependents rely on you, legal directives and estate safeguarding are no longer optional. Fourth, aggressive tax optimization ensures you legally retain maximum capital. Finally, you need a strict auditing schedule to measure your progress. If your income streams are complex, securing a certified professional to align these moving parts is a brilliant maneuver. The fourth imperative is constructing an impenetrable liquidity vault. While your previous decade allowed you to survive on 3 to 6 months of runway, your current era demands a massive upgrade. You need a minimum of 6 to 12 months of total living expenses completely locked away, perhaps more if your revenue fluctuates. The reasoning is simple. The scale of your emergencies multiplies. A sudden property catastrophe, a severe mechanical failure, or a family medical crisis can strike simultaneously. Conversely, a lucrative investment opportunity might require immediate capital deployment. A fortified cash reserve is not just a defensive shield, it is pure leverage. It allows you to negotiate aggressively at your workplace or effortlessly handle life's turbulence. Park these funds in a high-yield savings vehicle where they generate passive yield but remain instantly accessible. By the way, what is the most shocking, unexpected expense you've encountered recently? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you are gaining value from this breakdown, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to Kyle Invests. The fifth major objective requires holding exactly 3 times your annual earnings inside a dedicated retirement vehicle by the time you reach 40. Let us adjust the standard metrics to a solid, round baseline. Assume a typical professional earns roughly $70,000 a year at that age. This means your portfolio should sit at approximately $210,000 when you blow out those 40 candles. Before panic sets in, look at the underlying mathematics. If you secure that specific baseline and maintain consistent monthly deposits, compound growth models project an ending balance exceeding $2.5 million by age 67. The raw dollar amount is actually secondary to the true lesson here. This milestone is entirely about maximizing the timeline for compound interest to operate. You are essentially building a financial machine that works independently while you sleep. Every single year you postpone this aggressive accumulation strategy, you permanently forfeit exponential growth that can never be recovered. If you find yourself trailing behind this specific trajectory, do not surrender to despair. You still possess over 2 decades before traditional retirement age, which provides ample runway for market forces to do their heavy lifting. However, the mathematical difficulty increases exponentially with every delayed year. The smartest corrective action is incrementally boosting your deposit rate. Every promotion, annual bonus, or job transition should automatically trigger a higher savings percentage. Pushing your contribution rate from 10% to 15% seems trivial today, but over 25 years it dictates whether you exit the workforce comfortably or grind until you are 75. This naturally transitions into the sixth pivotal target, developing absolute immunity to lifestyle inflation. This concept actively separates true wealth architects from people who merely look rich. Your current decade represents prime hunting ground for lifestyle creep, where rising incomes magically match rising expenses. You have likely witnessed this exact phenomenon among your peers. They secure a lucrative promotion and suddenly convince themselves they require a luxury high-rise apartment. A year-end bonus hits, and a brand new $80,000 vehicle suddenly appears in their driveway. I have observed professionals in metropolitan hubs like New York pulling in massive six-figure salaries, yet they operate perpetually on the edge of ruin. They finance depreciating assets, dine at elite restaurants nightly, and then loudly complain about an inability to build capital. It is the equivalent of pouring premium fuel into a tank full of holes. The ultimate defense against this wealth-destroying cycle is not miserable deprivation, but rather strategic automation. Whenever your compensation scales up, instantly reroute at least 50% of that new money directly into investment accounts. If you secure a $10,000 annual pay bump, quietly automate $5,000 of it straight into your portfolio. Your current lifestyle remains unaffected, and your future self reaps the massive rewards. The seventh requirement often makes people uncomfortable, but it remains one of the most profound acts of responsibility you can execute for your loved ones. We are talking about locking down a comprehensive estate structure. It is easy to assume you are far too young to bother with legal directives, but if you hold property, support dependents, or manage substantial capital, this paperwork is absolutely mandatory. This is less about preparing for the end and entirely about managing life's chaotic curveballs. If an accident renders you incapacitated, who holds the legal authority to make critical medical or financial choices? If tragedy strikes both you and your partner, who legally assumes care of your children? Without explicit legally binding documents, these profoundly personal decisions are hijacked by bureaucratic court systems instead of being guided by your wishes. For the vast majority, securing foundational legal protection through streamlined online services is inexpensive and infinitely better than leaving your family completely exposed. The eighth major objective is rarely discussed by traditional wealth advisors, yet it represents a massive financial vulnerability: aggressively preserving your biological capital. Most people view physical well-being and wealth accumulation as completely separate categories, but they are deeply intertwined. Let us evaluate this purely as a strict economic equation. Analytical models suggest that a standard citizen might burn through approximately $400,000 in lifetime medical treatments and interventions. If you can slash that projection by just 25% through proactive maintenance, meaning optimal nutrition, consistent physical exertion, and avoiding toxic habits, you have effectively retained $100,000 of your future net worth. That calculation does not even factor in the severe drop in earning potential caused by chronic fatigue, or the lucrative promotions missed because of poor physical resilience. Your physical body is the ultimate underlying engine of your entire wealth creation strategy. The reality of your third decade is that your biological engine simply stops forgiving poor daily maintenance. In your earlier years, you could consume endless processed meals and skip sleep schedules without facing immediate consequences. Now, a single weekend of poor dietary choices seems to permanently alter your baseline, and a bad night of rest destroys your cognitive focus for days. Building durable wellness routines while you still possess a degree of metabolic elasticity is infinitely cheaper and easier than trying to medically repair severe systemic damage 2 decades later. Think of capital spent on premium whole foods, high-quality fitness coaching, or a well-equipped training facility not as consumer expenses, but as strategic preventative insurance. Deploying small, consistent amounts of capital today to keep the biological machine running perfectly will ultimately save you from catastrophic medical bankruptcy in your twilight years. Moving forward to the ninth crucial checkpoint, We must address the hyperinflationary environment of higher education. If you are raising the next generation, ignoring this variable is a mathematical disaster waiting to happen. University pricing has aggressively outpaced standard economic inflation for decades without showing any signs of stabilization. Currently, securing a standard 4-year degree at a state university can easily demand $50,000 annually when factoring in housing, literature, and operational costs. If you target elite private institutions, that figure skyrockets dangerously toward $80,000 every single year. You are certainly not obligated to fully underwrite this massive expense for your dependents, but ignoring the timeline entirely wastes your greatest mathematical advantage: time. Deploying capital early allows market compounding to do the heavy lifting for you, transforming small monthly deposits into massive educational endowments. This is exactly where specialized educational investment vehicles become an absolute necessity. The structural brilliance of these designated education accounts lies in their aggressive tax shielding architecture. As your capital compounds over the years, institutional authorities cannot touch the growth. When you eventually extract those funds for verified academic expenses, the distributions remain completely legally sheltered from taxation. Certain jurisdictions even reward your initial deposits with immediate tax deductions, functioning like an automatic financial subsidy for future tuition. Even if you can only allocate a modest $150 monthly, injecting that capital while your dependents are infants provides an 18-year runway for explosive market growth. Furthermore, modern legislative changes have introduced incredible flexibility into these systems. If your child pursues an alternative career path or secures full academic scholarships, those accumulated funds can be redirected to a sibling, utilized for your own advanced training, or even seamlessly rolled over into long-term retirement accounts. The 10th and final target is cultivating absolute financial certainty. This objective is not measured by a specific balance in your checking account, but rather by your psychological command over your economic reality. It means navigating market turbulence without instantly panicking and liquidating assets the moment a red candle appears on a chart. It means you no longer lie awake in the middle of the night, terrified about funding a holiday or surviving retirement. This level of confidence emerges only when you possess a unified strategy where every single element synchronizes perfectly. Your liquid reserves, long-term market portfolios, educational endowments, and legal directives must function as a cohesive machine rather than isolated, neglected accounts. You must comprehend exactly how these gears turn together to produce your desired outcome, ensuring that a surprise expense never derails your broader wealth accumulation journey. Managing this complex architecture requires genuine self-awareness and brutal honesty about your capabilities. Certain individuals thrive on constructing intricate spreadsheets, tracking endless tax regulations, and executing this master plan independently with pinpoint accuracy. Others quickly recognize the immense value of bringing in an objective, certified professional to oversee the complex mechanics of their wealth. A neutral advisor acts as a psychological buffer, preventing emotional biases from destroying long-term returns when the financial climate inevitably turns hostile. Ultimately, the specific methodology matters far less than the conviction you have in the blueprint itself. You need an adaptable system that flexes when your life circumstances drastically shift, keeping you firmly anchored while short-term economic chaos tries to convince you that your progress is failing or moving backward. Consider this specific decade as your ultimate economic proving ground. You are commanding higher capital inflows than ever before, combined with decades of remaining runway for compound growth to absolutely explode in your favor. Simultaneously, you are juggling heavier life obligations and competing demands for that exact same capital. The strategic maneuvers you execute during this precise window will strictly dictate whether your 50s and 60s are characterized by absolute financial freedom or relentless, exhausting anxiety. However, these 10 checkpoints are absolutely not designed to induce panic or force you to compare your progress against some mythical standard of perfection. They exist simply to illuminate the clear path forward, ensuring you can actually enjoy your future without facing the terrifying prospect of grinding away at a desk until you reach the age of 85, out of sheer necessity. The absolute greatest advantage of this era is that you still possess the raw power and time to aggressively alter your trajectory. Dwelling on previous financial blunders is completely useless. You cannot navigate forward by staring obsessively into the rearview mirror while the road ahead demands your full attention. Instead, isolate just one or two of these crucial targets that heavily align with your current reality and attack them relentlessly. Wipe out that lingering high-interest balance, or finally deploy initial capital into that shielded savings vehicle you have been delaying for months. Tiny, ruthless actions build massive, unstoppable momentum over time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Drop a comment below letting me know which of these 10 financial targets you are going to conquer first. See you in the next video, and remember, stay smart with your money. Take care.